What's the most in-demand magic item to give to your players? Is it magic weapons? Potions? Armor? No. The answer is far simpler. It's the Bag of Holding, the #1 surefire way to hand-wave item weight and streamline looting dragon hordes of unrealistically large size with their huge piles of gold and gems. Unless you're the barbarian, in which case you're probably using it to stash troll limbs for that perfect prank on the bard later. But what if I told you there's something else lurking in that bag? And no, it's not the creature from its cursed twin, the Bag of Devouring. It's something far worse. Something far more real. Something that crawls out on cold, stormy nights, frustrated as it realizes it's just another adventurer's bag, searching for its home. So what is it, you ask? They say it was once an adventurer, though adventurer may be a bit too generous of a title. Just one in a group of nobodies, a band of novice, would-be heroes, setting out to slay some beast and collect riches. No one remembers exactly what they were after. That part of the tale has been swallowed by time. But what's left are the facts. Whatever they faced that day was beyond their meager skills. One by one they fell, their last breaths lost to terror. And the last one standing, he wasn't a hero. He was a coward. When his comrades met their fates, he fled into the closest escape, the party's Bag of Holding, hoping to hide from the inevitable. But that bag was no exit. It was an entrance to a new place, the in-between, a cold, desolate labyrinth connecting every extra-dimensional storage space. A place not meant for life, and he searched for a way out. But over time, the madness set in, and the strange forces of the in-between warped him into something monstrous. They merely call it the Bagman. Every night, they say, he slips from a random Bag of Holding, and if he doesn't find his way home, he drags someone back with him, leaving behind a trinket from his kingdom of forgotten junk. So, that wraps up the lore behind the Bagman, with a few of my own additions to spice up the mythos a bit. Now, interestingly enough, there's no official stat block for the Bagman. The general recommendation is to use a troll stat block with a few tweaks like adding Amorphous and Alien Mind, but honestly, that feels far too basic for what should be a truly terrifying creature. So I took the liberty of crafting a DM Dungeon Mastery version of the Bagman with a stat block that I think truly captures its horror. So let's dive into that now. Well, here we are. What a perfect creature for the month of October. Very, very creepy. So, the Bagman. He has very many different depictions according to his concept art. There's a couple different pieces that are very interesting. Some show it having 4 arms, some show it crawling around while it's still in the bag, and those are all interesting. Dungeon Dad took the idea in the lore that there are multiple Bagmen. I like the idea that the Bagman is a singular creature, sort of like a horror movie. This is up there with the Jason Voorhees or the Michael Myers of the D&D world. That is this creature. So, the Bagman in my world is a large aberration. Some people say that he should be undead. I went with aberration, being that it is a humanoid that crawled into a bag and was warped into this strange creature from these extra-dimensional planes of existence. The in-between, as they call it. Now, I gave it an armor class of 18 with unnatural armor. hit points of 210, pretty beefy, definitely not a troll, though I did use a troll stat block as the baseline and built onto it from there. Movement speed of 30 feet, so nothing to write home about yet, really, especially moving into the ability scores. We have a 20 strength, 18 dexterity, 20 constitution, 9 intelligence, so it's not very smart, 18 wisdom, and a 1 in charisma. This creature has long since lost its mind. It is completely and utterly insane. That's my idea I had going into this. So let's move into the abilities and things of that nature. So we have saving throw proficiencies. That's what I was trying to say. Strength saving throw proficiency and a dexterity saving throw proficiency. It's a creature that is large size and it's very lanky, so I think it should be able to run around really quickly. If you want a really good inspiration for making your own version of the Bagman, I highly recommend this movie called The Tunnel from 2011. It's an Australian horror film. It's found footage style. It is incredibly creepy, and there's a creature in this movie that gave me the inspiration for the Bagman. So, moving on to the skills here, we have athletics, perception. Why perception, you may ask? Well, if it's roaming around in these different dimensional planes where I'm just imagining there are mounds and mounds of junk, it's probably going to have a high perception skill so that it can look for whatever trinket it's looking for to leave behind. Sleight of hand. This is so that it can reach its hand out of the bag in the middle of the night and take things off of your player characters. So if they have, a special bejeweled dagger that the warlock has hanging off of his belt that he got in a gambling game in a tavern, well, maybe the Bagman likes it and he takes it. And that's how you can start teasing the players and building up to the encounter with this creature by having it make these sleight of hand checks. And then on the off chance that it rolls a natural 1 or something, you just see the glimpse of this long spindly hand coming out of the bag and grabbing something before it goes in. And then that is going to make them incredibly paranoid for the rest of the campaign. Also, it has a stealth proficiency because the idea of this creature sneaking out of the bag, sneaking around the room while the player characters are sleeping and just taking things, I think that fits the creature very well. Again, this is all speculation. This is just what I am imagining when I think of this creature. So, damage resistances, we have acid, fire, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, and that's from magical weapons also. So, barbarian style resistances, except for the acid and fire. I just felt those were very, very common damage types. So I want the creature to be sturdy. So your spellcasters are going to have to put the work in while the frontliners are going to have to hold this creature off. But they're going to struggle too, don't worry. Damage immunities, cold. The reason why I chose cold is because the Bagman is in a domain that I would imagine to be incredibly, incredibly cold. It is the void, essentially. It is devoid of light and warmth, I would imagine, so I went with cold. If you disagree, obviously you can change that, but that's just what I am thinking. And then it cannot be damaged by non-magical attacks with weapons, so bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. I think that's befitting. Condition immunities, charmed and frightened. This creature is completely and utterly insane, so I don't think you should be able to charm it. I highly doubt the Bagman would be afraid of anything, though it could still have the sense to preserve its life, so it could still flee from battle. Now, senses, we have dark vision of 60 feet and tremor sense of 60 feet. The tremor sense is the idea that if you get pulled into its domain or you go into its domain after it and you start walking over the little junk piles that are all over the place in its lair, it might be able to sense that you're walking through its lair. So that's why I chose tremor sense. And then the only language that it speaks is maddening whispers. The Bagman is insane. And remember, I'm going to keep saying that probably 100 times, so it's not even speaking a language, it's just muttering these horrific, crazed words that you can't comprehend. Now let's move into the special traits. Okay, so as we go into the special traits, I want you guys to really start envisioning horror movies. Think The Grudge, think The Ring, think The Tunnel, which I am gonna again recommend you should go watch that movie. It's very creepy. Amorphous. I did take the developer's recommendation. They recommend that you use a troll stat block with the amorphous trait. I'm using amorphous. And it would be absolutely terrifying if your player characters see that the Bagman is trying to come out of the bag of holding, which is a satchel, so it would be hanging on their person. They take the satchel off, they throw it across the room, they shut a door, and then suddenly this blackened, greasy hair starts sliding under the door frame and materializes back in the room. Almost like an ooze, but it's not an ooze, it's a humanoid, but it's not a humanoid, it's an aberration. This creature is all about horror. This is an absolute scare fest of a monster, in my opinion. I really, really like this creature. So, here's our first unique thing that I kind of came up with, but it's obviously very similar to how a Lich would have it. So this is Weird Revivification. If the Bagman drops to 0 hit points outside of its demiplane, and it doesn't regenerate, it transforms into a black, writhing, shadowy mass of hair strands instead of dying before quickly slithering back to the nearest extra-dimensional storage space. It then gains a body in 1d12 days, regaining all its hit points and becoming active again. The new body appears within the demiplane from which it originated. So you cannot kill the Bagman for real unless you go into the bag of holding dimension and slay it for good. Almost like a curse in a way. It's not really explained, and this is my creative liberty, but I think this would be quite the fun thing to deal with. This is my version of the Bagman is meant for high level parties, but also you could introduce this creature at a lower level. Just make sure you emphasize how powerful this creature has become. So yeah, if you slay the Bagman outside in the material plane, it doesn't actually get destroyed. Now, if they destroy the bag of holding before it goes back into that bag of holding, it just essentially slithers off into the distance looking for the nearest extra-dimensional storage space. So that could be a Heward's handy haversack, it could be a portable hole, or it could be somebody else's bag of holding in the city somewhere. Very, very disturbing, as it should be. Magic weapons, I think, you gotta have your monsters need to have magic weapon attacks at this level, at a CR 20. Sunlight sensitivity. The Bagman is walking around in a lightless domain. I think it should have sunlight sensitivity, so that's a weakness that the players can exploit when fighting this creature. It has a mutable form. You cannot polymorph the Bagman into something. I just picture that if it was already warped into this creature from the domain that it resides in, that is what it is permanently stuck as. So you're not going to be able to change it with magic unless you use a wish spell or of some sort. It has the Kidnapper trait. Now this is not specifically for children. This is just kidnapping the action of kidnapping someone. The Bagman has advantage on attack rolls against any creature grappled by it. It can pull a creature it's grappling without a penalty to its movement speed. Now that's important. You're going to see when we get into the actions that's going to come into play. Regeneration. Now, I'm giving the Bagman a much more powerful form of regeneration from the base 2014 Troll. My Troll rework, which you guys should watch that video if you want to see a good rework on Trolls, or go to my Discord channel where you can find their stat blocks. You can download them for free. My Trolls make a essentially a concentration check every time they take damage that is needed to stop the regeneration. Because how many times do your creatures that have regeneration actually get to regenerate? Especially if fire damage is what stops the regeneration. Probably I would place a bet that you can't even count on one hand how many times a troll has actually gotten to regenerate in your game. So the Bagman's regeneration gives it 25 HP at the start of its turn. If it takes psychic or force damage, it must succeed on a con save, and the DC is 10 plus the damage taken, minimum of 10, or it loses this trait until the start of its next turn. The Bagman dies only if it starts its turn with 0 hit points and doesn't regenerate. So force damage is an easy to come by damage if you have a warlock in the party, because Eldritch Blast is force damage. Psychic damage is not so easy to come by, so the warlock is going to be the MVP of this fight, especially if they have Eldritch Blast. That's going to be the way to take the Bagman down. These are very tough damage types to sort of get, so yes, I understand it's going to be difficult, but that's what I wanted it to be. This is a legend. This is a folklore tale. This is a creepy, unsettling monster. I think it should be hard to take down. So we have our final special trait here, Legendary Resistance. All Dungeon Masters know what this does. If the Bagman fails a saving throw, it can choose to succeed instead 3 times a day. So, without further ado, that's all the passive traits that the Bagman has. Let's get into the actions. Okay, and here we go. This is where I have to show my hand, and hopefully you guys like what I've come up with here. So let's do the honorary first things first. We have multi-attack, because of course we do, right? The Bagman makes 4 attacks, 2 with its elongated hands, and 1 with its unnatural maw. If a creature is frightened of the Bagman, it can use its unsettling eyes. So, elongated hands. Let's start off with the first thing here. So, my stat blocks, if you're new here, I have them different than how Wizards of the Coast does them. So, you'll see at the top, the category that we're looking at is the elongated hands. That is the weapon, okay? So that is the melee weapon. It is a plus 11 to hit, and it has a reach of 5 feet. Now, underneath of that, you're going to see the categories of attacks it can do. So it has 2 different things that it can do with the elongated hands. Now, the reason why I do that is if your players are creative, they somehow tie the Bagman's hands behind his back, they cut his hands off, he won't be able to use any of these attacks that are in this category. So let's start off with the first attack that it could do. Now these all are plus 11 to hit. So you look at the top part to see what you need to do whenever you roll. It just tells you a plus 11 to hit and has a 5-foot reach. Now they'll tell you if there's anything else you need to worry about, but as for now, just assume it's plus 11 to hit, 5 feet of reach. So we have cold claws. Now even the claws of the Bagman are cold because of its domain that it resides in. So it does 2d6 slashing damage plus 2d6 cold damage. And then if you are medium, small, or tiny, you are mangled. So I will show you on screen what mangled does, but essentially what it is your movement speed is reduced by half until you receive magical healing. So the Bagman can absolutely overpower you if he is bigger than you. Now if you cast the enlarge spell on yourself and you turn into a large creature, you won't be affected by the mangled part, you'll just take the damage. So that's sort of a way to kind of play around that. The next attack we have here is Suffocating Grab. Now Suffocating Grab is a special action, so this does not require an attack roll. The Bagman attempts to grapple a medium or smaller humanoid in range. The creature must make a DC 19 strength save. On a failure, the target is grappled. The escape DC is 19. While grappled this way, the creature takes 4d6 bludgeoning damage at the start of each of its turns. It cannot use its mouth to speak or make sound, and is suffocating. However, while grappling a creature this way, the Bagman's elongated hands can only be used on the creature it's grappling. So it can only use cold claws on creatures that it is already grappling. So that'll do it for elongated hands. I think that's befitting of the creature. Simple, easy to run, easy to understand, very terrifying to fight, however. So the next attack we have, this is with its creepy looking mouth that you see in all the artwork. This is Unnatural Maw. So you'll see Chilling Bite can only target grappled creatures. So this is creatures that the Bagman is holding on to. So on a hit, which is plus 11, it does 2d10 piercing damage plus 2d10 cold damage. And now, if you're a large or smaller creature, you are frightened of the Bagman. You can make the saving throw at the end of each of your turns to end this effect only if the Bagman is not within your line of sight. And the save DC is a DC 19 Wisdom save. So if you get bit by the Bagman, you just get filled with this absolute sense of terror, and you can't break out of that feeling until you can no longer see the Bagman. I think that's hand in hand with what this creature is supposed to be doing to your player characters, instilling a sense of horror and madness. And the second thing that it can do with its Unnatural Maw, so remember, if you can somehow hold its mouth shut, it can't use these abilities. So, Horrifying Howl. This is a recharge of a 5 or 6. This is considered a special action, so this does not make a melee attack with this. The Bagman emits a spine-chilling howl. Each creature within 30 feet of the Bagman that can hear the howl must make a DC 19 Wisdom save. If they fail, they take 4d10 psychic damage, and the creature is frightened until the end of the Bagman's next turn. If they succeed, they only take half damage and they are not frightened. Now, the frightened condition is a cool thing on its own, but that's going to lead into and combo off of this next ability with its Unsettling Eyes. Now, one thing that really creeps me out about the Bagman's art is he has those glowing eyes that are underneath that matted, greasy hair that he has. So he can do one thing with the Unsettling Eyes, and these have a range of 120 feet. They don't require an attack roll, though. And remember, he can't use this unless a creature is frightened, because as we see here, Gaze of the Forgotten, frightened creatures only. So he can only target a frightened creature with this. The Bagman snaps its head unnervingly in the direction of a creature that can see it. That creature must succeed on a DC 19 Wisdom save. If they fail, creature drops to 0 hit points as its heart stops suddenly. So they literally have a heart attack at the sight of this creature. I took that from the Sea Hag stat block, and I feel like it's absolutely fitting on the Bagman. And this is not a recharge, but it can only target creatures that are frightened. But as you can see with the rest of the Bagman stat block, he kind of farms your characters for frightened condition. So this is gonna be a lot more dangerous of a fight than it originally was if you just took a troll stat block, gave it amorphous and alien mind. Let's keep going here. Here's where we start pulling the mythos into play with these final 2 actions. The Beckoning. It's a special action. He can only use this on a creature that is grappled. If the Bagman is within 5 feet of a bag of holding or similar extra-dimensional space, it uses Terror of Forgotten Paths. The creature that he's holding must make a DC 19 strength save unless the creature is incapacitated. If the creature fails this save, it is pulled into the demi-plane along with the Bagman, and the Bagman leaves behind a trinket from its hidden kingdom of lost junk in the creature's place. So if he comes out of this bag while your player characters are sleeping, and he manages to successfully use Suffocating Grab, muffling that creature, and just drags them into the bag, that's terrifying. Kind of mean, but absolutely terrifying. Now, let's move into the final action here. This is last but not least. This is sort of the explanation as to how the Bagman moves inside of the in-between or comes out of the in-between. So this is Tear of Forgotten Paths. Now, I've seen a lot of other people's iterations of the Bagman have something similar to this on their stat blocks. This is my iteration of it. So the Bagman opens a tear in reality, and its destination depends on where the Bagman is. So if it's in the in-between, so if it's in the bag of holding dimension, this ability connects to a random or previously accessed extra-dimensional storage space. If he hears someone speaking around an open bag of holding, he can open a tear directly to that location. If he's outside the in-between, so if he's in the material plane in your tent while you're sleeping, he has to target a bag of holding or a similar object, and then it opens into the vast in-between through the bag's largest opening or the item's entrance. So for example, a portable hole he could use this on also. And the duration of both of these, either way, lasts for 12 seconds after he passes through the portal opens for 12 seconds, and then it vanishes and it seals that path off forever. That is my iteration of the Bagman. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. If you go to my Patreon, I have an extra stat block for you. This stat block is the Bagman specifically if you choose to engage him inside of the bag of holding domain, along with some lair actions and some legendary actions, because I feel the Bagman would be a lot stronger in his own domain. But this version, definitely doable in both cases, I think. I feel like this will absolutely carry you through a campaign even. This creature is very terrifying. I think you guys are going to have a lot of fun scaring your players with it. I have not play tested this, so if you guys do run this, come back to the video comment section. Let me know how it goes. Let me know if any of your players cried. Let me know if any of them one-shot the Bagman and I need to buff his stats a little bit. Just let me know. It's been DM Dungeon Mastery. Thank you for the patience on this one. Happy spooky month. I will see you guys in the next video. Keep an eye out for the polls, as we're only getting closer to October 31st. Thank you guys. DM Dungeon Mastery, not saying goodnight. I'm just saying. Later.